Hi, this is Ian Wright, and today I'm going to give a little talk about the idea of self-healing. Can we heal ourselves? So I'm just going to talk about the idea of health, the idea of healing, and I suppose come to the understanding about the question, what is normal? What is normal health? What is health? And how do we perceive our own health? And if we don't feel healthy, if we are unwell, what does it mean? What is unwell? And if we are that, how do we change that? So I suppose the first thing first question to ask is, what is health? Now, health, I think, can mean very different things to very different people. What is a healthy perception? For example, you could have someone who is quite sick from an external point of view, with, say, cancer, for example, but they could feel like they have health. They could feel a quality of wellness in them, or a child adult with complex brain trauma, cerebral palsy, for example. Does that make that child or adult unhealthy? I mean, you can question that, can't you? Because not necessarily. So what makes us, and now we're coming to talk about ourselves, what makes us have a perception of feeling well? What is well? So let's examine that for a second. So, I mean, the first thing I think that we have to realize is it's about our self-perception. And how do we create a perception of our own potential health? You can look at things like interoception, which is our internal sensing, where you can, for example, there's a sense that we can get through maybe the anterior vagal nerve of certain organs. The pancreas has motion receptors. Different organs in the body have certain feeling qualities to them. But this idea of feedback, internal feedback, so for example, we can feel hungry, we can feel thirsty, we can feel tired. What does tired feel like? This is the body. This is to do maybe with a quality of vitality or energy that we feel. You know, if you ask yourself right now, how do I feel? Do I feel tired? Do I feel well? How do I feel? What goes in to make up how you feel? You know, and when you start to look at this idea of interoception, it doesn't take long to meet what I would call these are filters. Like, so that you have a quality of feeling. Say you have a sore finger, and we'll come to pain actually. Say if you just feel tired, that quality of feeling tired, say, is filtered through a variety of parts of the brain, which connect certain things like memory, belief, executive function, cognition, how you think, how you feel, how you emotionally filter it, and how that connects to memory. So, for example, if we have traumatic memory laid down of feeling a certain way, we filter how we feel through that, or we can do, and we can learn not to as well. And that will set almost a background tone to how we feel. And the question is how we feel more important than what our diagnosis is, if we have a diagnosis of anything, for example. And so you can extend that to saying, actually, if you're working, and I work a lot with people in chronic pain, who have chronic pain syndrome, say, and some serious elements of pain. And it's interesting because you have two people, say you have a significant pain syndrome, like, say, trigeminal neuralgia. But their quality and experience of pain can be completely different. So pain is a sensation that is caused by maybe a local inflammatory response in a nerve ending, which is filtered maybe back through the spinal cord to the brain, switched back through the thalamus to the sensory cortex. And some people will feel that as an acute, unbearable feeling, and other people it would feel more in the background. And it's filtered through things like belief, memory, executive function, cognition in the brain. There are other factors that come in and set this tone. One of them is, for example, the activation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal cortex, HPA axis, and stress. So stress puts in another layer of filter. When you have HPA activation, you have decrease of maybe vagal feedback, meaning that kind of rebalancing part of the autonomic nervous system, or in a medium term or long term stress response, you have increased cortisol production, for example. And that's cortisol effect actually on depressing the immune system, which can create some degree of immunosensitization or a wavering immune response. So actually, at the beginning, with higher cortisol, actually it can be quite helpful to the immune system. It can suppress inflammatory processes, but it tends to flip. So you get acute inflammatory responses that come in and out as the immune system regulates, deregulates. So stress, so if it's like also, it's the glass. If the glass is full, if you are full with stress and you have some kind of symptomology, it overloads the glass, so that it actually not feeling well, or your perception of not feeling well, actually can make you feel worse. It can create stress in you. So the whole thing could go around in circles. So then we have other important filters like emotional fields. So, say 3 key emotions that we could talk about are anger, fear, grief. They have physiological effects on the body. We know them, we feel them. And they filter through how we have a perception of how we feel. So our emotional fields and how our emotional quality, if we actually feel happy, for example, if we are unhappy, or we have anxiety or some degree of low-level depression or unresolved emotional stories, that again will take us through a different filter in how we have this interoception of how we feel. So I suppose we can start at the beginning. At the beginning, when we first are conceived, we are the perfect conceptus, which is a wholeness. So we have this perfect unfolding wholeness, which evolves itself and becomes us. This wholeness, which is this perfect fluid body on a cellular level, becomes what we are, okay? Now, so from this perfect unfolding wholeness, which is us, we have things that can come in and affect that. And this is what we work with. So pre-birth issues, mild things, genetics and epigenetic stories that can have an ancestral patterns, and how they can have subtle lineage effects. I was talking to a patient yesterday about these subtle threads of ASD coming through families and stuff like that. Then you have birth and prenatal, perinatal trauma. Even if it's not traumatic, there are layers of birth effects that affect this perfect unfolding of a baby. And again, when we're working, we try and restore this perfect unfolding, embryonic unfolding of wholeness. And then we have life with its illnesses, with its accidents, with its operations, our emotional relational fields, and the stuff of how we process everything that happens to us. So all of these factors come in and have an effect on our unfolding wholeness and create a sense, be it real or perceived, it doesn't matter. In the end, it's what we feel that is important, of being unwell or feeling unwell. Be that chronic pain, be that anxiety, be that just this feeling that things aren't right, or worry. These are all taking us away from our perfect unfolding. So the question is, that we started with, is, can we self-heal? Well, actually, our body is continually self-healing. Every moment it is self-healing. That is normal physiological process, maintaining a homeostatic, steady state. So every moment our system, our physiology goes out of balance a little bit, because, say, there are sugar demands that change, or vascular demands, or we do something, we go for a run and it puts us into deficiency or whatever, and the body restores itself, often through sleep, rest, food, water, nutrition, etc., into its perfectly balanced state through a combination of nutrition, etc., vascular oxygenation, metabolic waste, etc., and rest, and a perfect natural physiological memory of this embryological fields of our perfect movement and motion. And this is something that we look at, certainly in my work, is engaging with these natural embryonic forces that are still there, that restore us to this pattern of normal. Because actually that's all we're looking for. We're looking for normal. And actually I learned that from that idea of normal from Dr. James Jealous, actually, many years ago. Would talk about normal, just finding normal, and it's a beautiful thing. Anyway, I'm going to talk about him in the meditation that's coming about an hour's time, so we won't talk about that now. So, okay, so normal physiology, that's what we're trying to do, is restore normalcy. And can we do that? How do we do that? So number one, I think, the first thing I think we can do is we need to look at our perception, because actually how well we feel is all in our perception. What we do perceptually is tune into what feels wrong, what feels blocked, what feels painful, what feels heavy, what feels tired. The things that don't feel right draw our attention. They do that for a reason, because actually if you've hurt yourself, it needs to recover. And talking about perfect unfolding, if we cut ourselves, look how our bodies restore it. If we break a bone, look how beautifully it can heal given the right environment. Our immune systems have an incredible natural ability to fight infection, much better than anything external that we can have. They're incredible things. But there are things that can slow that process. And what we want to do is take out the stops to our body restoring itself. So a simple thing that we can start with is changing our perceptive awareness. So we tune in to actually not what feels blocked, what feels unhappy, which feels irritable, which feels painful, to what feels, where in our bodies can we feel an aliveness? Where can we feel something that feels potency? And just that little shift in perception can give us great relief. It's interesting when you do that, when you're working with people who have chronic severe pain, and you have to, like people who say have secondary bone cancer, you have to be relentless in your perception to take yourself away from that pain into something that feels soft, something feels quiet in your breathing. And if you relentlessly restore that, not blocking out the pain, no, you just shift your attentional awareness. And a lot of the work that I do is about shifting your attentional awareness, be it if you're healing someone else or if you're healing yourself. Another important thing, which is really, I think, very key, is to do with regulating this HPA axis, bringing ourselves out of a stress response. If we can self-regulate our HPA axis, it gives us a great scope for peace to enter, very simply. So in some ways, that is bringing our physiologies to a state of neutrality, neutral. So it's not being driven by this, hypothalamic adrenal, reactivity, sympathetic activity, this fight, flight response where we can come back into a place of balance. That's really important. We find ourselves to a place of neutral. Another really important thing is in order to self-heal, we have to be in our bodies. So it's very often we're not actually living in our bodies. And when to be in your body, you have to be spatially, as in space, in your body, not beside yourself. When we are often stressed, we're beside ourselves, or we're in a million different places in our mind. We have to come back to ourselves. Temporally as well, within time. We have to be now, here, now. Here is the important one, and now. So that's bringing in your fulcrums. That's a really important one. It's really important to actively start examining your beliefs when it comes to self-healing, because our beliefs are a key filter by which we perceive our health. And we have to be really conscious and examine our beliefs about health. If we don't, one of the filters is still in place and everything can get filtered through that. So that takes a conscious processing. Other things that we can do to address this, to engage with self-healing, is to develop a relationship to an underlying stillness that's always there behind all the noise. It brings us back home to ourselves, helps regulate our HPA axis, brings us into the here and now, and allows us to develop a relationship to an underlying peace, no matter what's going on in our lives. So we're not dragged in a million directions. So that's why meditative processes, etc., are so important. Self-care. This is all self-care. Dealing with emotions. Now, be that we might need therapy if there are emotions that are unexplored and unprocessed correctly, or just a simple practice of allowing yourself to feel the emotion. That process of allowing it changes it. It starts to transmutate it. So if you feel angry, if you sit, you quietly, you fully allow that feeling of anger to pass through you, not by attaching to the reasons why, etc., etc. Just feeling the physical energy of it changes it. It starts to breathe. Be that with grief, be that with fear. We have to allow it, embody it, and allow the health to try and manifest itself through it. It has to transmutate. These are energy things that have to transmutate. Pain, dealing with pain, specific techniques like I mentioned before. If we can actually manage pain ourselves by using breath work, using different forms of shifting our attentional awareness to our potential unfolding of health, it can help. There are other practices which are very nice around taking us into a place of potential healing. Cardiac heart coherence, earthing, working with compassion and forgiveness, engaging with the energy of joy and bliss, which help regulate that HPA axis. These are all specific practical processes and techniques, but actually trying to meet our own underlying potential for health as a perceptual practice is so important. So important. And then allowing something bigger to come in, this great tide, which I'm going to talk about in the meditation coming up in about half an hour, this tide that breathes us and connects us to nature and to each other. It's hugely important, and we've become disconnected from that, and I'll talk about that more next time. So as we go through these processes and unravel these beliefs, regulate our system, manage pain, emotions, etc., work with all of those, it brings us back to ourselves and brings us back to, hopefully, a place of wholeness in ourselves. We become that whole conceptus embryo, which is breathing and expressing itself as perfectly as it can within the moment. And we can do that if we're 97. You can do it much easier if you're 3 weeks old, because we don't have all those accumulations of life, but actually by working with this, and this process is of bringing us back to this potential unfolding of wholeness. It's important in terms of maintaining health. We have to find our health in order to maintain our health. Anyways, that's an introduction, really, to can we self-heal? I suppose the simple answer from my personal perspective is, if we take out our blocks on self-healing, then our body will heal itself as much as it can within the circumstance, or it can head towards finding its own health. Even if we are dealing with some serious pathology, we can still find health or a potential unfolding of health, even if we are dealing with something really serious. This work is almost more important. Well, it's important all the time, but no matter if it's something very serious you're dealing with or something very minor, if it's anxiety, which doesn't have to be minor at all, or just not feeling a bit right, feeling a bit tired, it's the same thing. We can actually reestablish or unblock our block on our potential manifestation of health. So anyway, that's a little introduction to that. I have a self-healing online course which covers all of this, and all with practical, 47 chapters, all with practical techniques to develop all of these processes and actually many more. And I wish you health, and I wish you well.